All right. I will call the meeting for the Wyoming County Business Center Board meeting on Tuesday, October 8th, here at the Ag Center. I'm Dan Luer, I'm the vice chair, and we'll establish a roll call here. So we'll just go around the room.
Brianna Stone.
Jim Brick.
Kevin Zanner, counsel for the Business Center.
Derek Bannock, project manager with Labella Associates.
Rob Naporowski, vice president of Labella.
Scott Gardner, IDA staff.
Jennifer Tishka, IDA staff.
Robin Marshall, IDA staff.
Jim Pierce, IDA staff.
Okay, I believe we have a quorum. All right, first item is the administrative to review and approve the minutes from the August 15th meeting, which are in your package.
I reviewed it. I'll move to the second as presented.
I have a motion by Director Brick to approve the minutes. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Second. Brianna, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next is to review and approve the financial report for August through September of 2024. I would ask the treasurer if he could provide that.
Our review, I see with our interest is doing well. I question there's no income from the fast track and the accelerator academy or mentorship. But, document says it comes in at different times, not necessarily the last month, even though there are some expenses for it because those are going out this time. Looks like the principals on the loans are coming in at a good rate. We received money on the Brownfield grant. I believe this is the last payment for it. And then from there, we went down the expenses. Of course, the big one was the project at MK. And, outside of that, everything seems to be in order.
Okay. Someone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. In your packet, there's the annual board member compliance documents, if you would, or a separate attachment, I believe. If you would please review those and sign and hand those in to Robin at the end of the meeting, that'd be great. All right, moving right along here, why don't we move to the MK Brownfield cleanup project update?
Yeah, just want to switch things up here, Mr. Vice Chairman, that I'd like to see if we could have the board consider a vote for the transfer of the land prior to the presentation, just because I know there's some hard stops among the board members here. So,
Okay, so in your packet, you have the resolution, right, for the Business Center to authorize the transfer of real property comprising 15.64 acres located in Arcade, New York, to Great Lakes Industrial Development LLC or an affiliated entity, and the execution and delivery of the deed and other actions required to effectively convey the property for the sum of $1. And I don't know if we need to go through the whole set of whereases, do we?
no, I do have a
Okay.
little context in terms of the developer, in case there's any questions about that. We've been working with, actually, the parent company is Frontier Global, and they have been working with us, and we have amended their designated developer agreement, meaning their part of this deal was we were going to get this EPA project to a point where there's still contamination, and that they would take the property over, get it submitted into the Brownfield cleanup program, and then redevelop the site. One of the things that we have put in the amended developer agreement with which was prepared by council was some timelines. So within Within 9 months of the transfer of the land, if the board decides to do so, they have to get the project into the brownfield cleanup program. If they don't, we have a reverter provision in the grant where the WCBC North LLC can take the property back for $1 as an option. So I think we're trying to put their feet to the fire a little bit and get them moving forward. That's why we put in some timelines there. And we think that we pretty much have ourselves covered with this new amended agreement. So really, we just want the board to consider transferring this project over to the developer, let them go through their steps. And they need the brownfield designation for the tax credits at the end of the day. So sure, it seems to make a lot of sense. So I will stop there with my comments.
Question for you, Kevin.
Sure, Dan.
Do they assume then all liability associated with that property once they've transferred the
So-
ownership?
Well, I think there's a liability release through the brownfield cleanup program, and they would take on that part of this. Do we have a liability release specifically? Not specifically, no. That's not how this is set up. What we did is we set this up in a separate limited liability company that protects this organization from those liabilities.
Okay.
Once that transfer has taken place and they go into the brownfield cleanup program, they would pursue a release from that program, and those environmental liabilities would be expunged, if you will.
Do they have to demonstrate any form of insurance coverage prior to this?
I think we did under the original agreement, yes. When we
Okay.
transfer the land, that's up to them. We're on a title at that point.
Right.
So the idea here is to get them into title sooner. Your original designated developer agreement provided for them to enter into a lease arrangement and then for you guys to flip it after they completed all of this. And in discussions with Jim, the idea had evolved to get them into title quicker so that we're not chasing them during the lease period. And the protection that you have if they don't perform is, as Jim mentioned, there's a reverter provision in the agreement that says that, again, you can, if you want, take it back, but there's no requirement to do that.
I see. Okay. That answers my question. Jim, do you, or Brianna, do you have any concerns, questions?
I think this was the plan all along.
Correct.
Exactly.
It really was.
I just become so attached to this property, I just hate to see it go.
Well, we can get you a lawn chair.
You still get to visit it,
Put one of the signs in there, like some of this handout here, where it says, no smoking, no spitting, or we can put Jim Pierce.
Now, is the property currently fenced?
It is,
So it is secure?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, until the windstorm took it down on Sunday, but that's what that goes.
All right. Okay. If no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution transferring the property to Great Lakes.
I would make a motion.
A second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right. That covers the action item, right?
Yeah, so we can jump back to Labella
Okay.
for the presentation.
Sure.
So Rob and Derek and their team have made several visits to the site with a drone operator and have an outline of all the things that have progressed, and I'd like to show the board that. Now that this computer is freshly upgraded, this should be a fast presentation.
Almost like I know what to do.
Okay. I'm breathing a sigh of relief. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Rob Naparowski with Labella. With me today is Derek Bannock from my office. Derek manages our hazardous building materials program, and I specialize in brownfield redevelopment. We worked closely together to assist WCBC North with this project. and to basically execute a strategy to advance redevelopment efforts focused on the former MK trading site. I think it's fantastic that property transfer is going to take place. This is really, the process that we envisioned. So we're moving right along. So today we're really here to kind of celebrate the completion of the US EPA funded portion of the project and to summarize the work that took place over the summer. In the background of this slide is a sign that stood on the lawn in front of the plant back in 2013, which was the first time that I visited the site with Jim. So he really has had an attachment to this property. At the time, we discussed the saga of this property and the complicated ownership situation that had kind of put the site in limbo. Today, I'm happy to be here with Jim to tell the story of how WCBC North was able to cross many obstacles associated with the site in order to transition it from an eyesore to a community asset. So we have some general ground rules for this presentation. You can see they're listed on the right-hand side here. We've adopted these from the MK plant. But seriously, we have about a 20-minute presentation. It's going to provide some background and summarize the primary components of the EPA-funded work that was just completed last month. Please feel free to ask any questions you'd like during the presentation. Derek and I will try to field those as best as we can. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the milestones here, but just to provide a little background, the site was developed as a dairy manufacturing facility around 1912. So fast forward 100 years or so, the site was sitting abandoned, tax delinquent, with a challenging ownership situation involving the estate of a deceased out-of-town owner. Kind of a nightmare. Wyoming County IDA defined a redevelopment strategy in collaboration with Wyoming County and the Village of Arcade. Kevin was involved with that as well, and as I said, we're kind of just following the roadmap that was set in 2019. WCBC North LLC was formed to advance cleanup and redevelopment initiatives for the site. This included getting a court order to conduct some environmental site assessment and investigations to define site conditions and determine the likelihood of eligibility for the New York State Brownfield Cleanup Program. Those investigations occurred in 2020 or so, and really provided the data and the information necessary for developers to come to the table and consider the project. So armed with this information, WCBC North solicited proposals for site redevelopment and executed a designated developer agreement with Great Lakes Industrial. WCBC North took ownership of the site in 2021 and collaborated with Great Lakes on a US EPA brownfield cleanup grant application in early 2023, which is at the end of the timeline here. A $500,000 grant requiring a 20% match was awarded to WCBC North to fund demolition and debris removal from the site, with the goal of preparing the property for remediation and redevelopment by the private sector under the BCP. So with that grant in hand, WCBC North hired Labella through a competitive process to provide qualified environmental professional services, basically to design, oversee cleanup activities, and assist with community engagement, all of which were requirements of the EPA grant. In late 2023, a community engagement committee was formed, and we held a kickoff meeting to inform community leaders on the specifics of the grant. This was followed by a public meeting to introduce the project to the community and collect feedback on project plans. We worked on abatement and demolition design during the winter of 2023 and developed plans and specifications that were put out for competitive bidding. A contractor was selected in April of 2024 and commenced with the site work in mid-May of this year. And the site work was completed prior to Labor Day. We're currently preparing a final summary report for submittal to the EPA and subsequent release to the community. And we also have planned a final public engagement meeting, and that's scheduled to be given at the Village of Arcade Board meeting on November 5th. So before we get into the cooperative agreement that WCBC North ratified with US EPA. So this agreement was signed in March and provided $500,000 in funding to implement a cleanup work plan that was approved by EPA. The objective of the work plan was to complete the controlled demolition of all structures remaining on the site and to remove all asbestos-containing material and debris from the site for proper disposal. We also had contingencies for the removal and proper disposal of any chemical containers encountered on the site under the grant funding. Other requirements of the cooperative agreement included the need to have oversight and monitoring by a QEP, and quarterly reporting to the EPA, and submittal of a final report. So checking all those boxes. So this slide identifies key members of the project team for the grant-funded work. As I mentioned, Labella served as the QEP. In this role, we generated the plans and specifications for the work. We provided daily oversight and monitoring during the work to ensure protection of the community and the environment. And we also monitored the contractor to ensure compliance with the plans and specifications. And have the responsibility of filing the final report. The environmental service group was subcontracted by Labella to undertake the disposal, characterization, removal, and disposal of drums and containers encountered during the demolition work. And Metro Contracting and Environmental was hired by WCBC North to perform the controlled demolition and debris removal work. So having the background, grant scope, and project team covered, we want to give you a sense of the site conditions that we were faced with when we started the work in May. Let's see if I can get this to go. Okay. So let me know if you need me to stop the ride. There's a lot of turns here, and
Need some air sick bags?
you might need to look away in a moment, but basically what you're looking at is roughly 60,000 square foot of multi-story building complex in a very advanced state of disrepair, sitting on the banks of a trout stream across from an elementary school.
Looks like a horse.
You can see we're approaching the old wastewater treatment plant. There's a couple clarifier tanks, pump buildings, etc. at that end of the site.
Can you hold it right there? So Jim, did we purchase additional land at the back end of this property? Does that include those water treatment and?
That was part of the original parcel,
Okay,
but we did add 5.1 acres of land that was foreclosed on by the county, and they provided that to us. For foreclosure.
what's on that property?
Green space.
Okay. Okay.
It just was adjacent, and the treasurer at the time thought it would, if you package it up with the rest of the property, you'd have a really attractive development. So
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
What
We're
was
gonna
the,
run over this again. You'll be able to see that property as we're moving.
the final use of that property? You know, I know it was a milk plant at one time. Last time it was operating, what were they doing?
they were making cream cheese there.
They're still using it as a milk plant.
Yeah. In fact, when they took down the last tanks in the really tall building, there was some whey product that was still in. It was, and it
that we were
put out a little cloud of odor for a day or so.
fortunate enough to get some whiffs of what they were doing there.
Not good enough to make mead. Not good enough to make mead.
So one of the bigger problems here was that there was some unpermitted salvage operations going on in the complex, resulted in deposition of a lot of debris that was commingled with asbestos material on the western portion of the site. You can see those piles of concrete, et cetera, they were all kind of mixed together with asbestos.
Well, we did initiate a stop work order.
That's right. That's how we got the contractor out of there.
Yes.
Salvage.
One thing that you'll see on this upper wall as we pan across the complex there is there's some graffiti. Almost see it on the white wall along, yeah, which is up on the roof, which just amazes me that anybody would venture up there, but it really drives home, what a physical hazard this presented to the community. So it's pretty easy to recognize why it would be very difficult to find a private developer willing to take on a headache like this.
Sure.
But fortunately, there were federal funds available to improve the property.
We didn't find any hidden treasures either, so. We did find a hidden space that we didn't even know existed on the site, but
Well, one of the challenging things with a piece of property like this is you can't go inside, and it's just not safe to send anybody in there to see what you're dealing with.
we went close that one day. It was
Okay.
pouring rain, but
Yeah, right.
I can remember you and I were over there.
It just astounds me that a site like this could exist in a village,
Especially
for so long.
Especially this close to the main street.
I think back in the day, the stuff went right off into the creek.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, also with the water.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was
Discharge.
basically what we inherited the first day of the job, and I'm gonna turn it over to Derek to talk through some of the work activities.
Sure, and I guess just to provide a little bit of context too, so when you have a property or, a complex like that, where it's really unsafe to go into, identify materials in there and or then have contractors go in there safely to remove any hazardous materials, you're more or less treated as a full asbestos controlled demolition, so it's kind of the main component of the project. So everything, all of the site activities were treated as an asbestos project. So once everything, we were, kind of given the thumbs up to Metro to move forward, they put in their appropriate EPA and DOL notifications, letting, the respective agencies, aware of the project. And then the first step was really getting that construction fence up to limit access to any, uncertified personnel. And then from a safety concern as well, they don't want anybody else, once they assume control of the site, they don't want anybody else wandering in there. Also appropriate signage and caution tape, things like that were posted on the site. So on the pallets, those are the silt socks used for the erosion control. So that was delivered that day. And they more or less put them on the creek side and bordered that side of the property, and then kind of up toward the wastewater treatment plant or facility as well.
And they're still there, so.
Still there, still left on site, right? That was our main construction entrance. You'll see all the gravel that was placed by Metro as well as a way to clean off the vehicles. Right off to the right there, there's a little wash basin, so they would spray down vehicles with any dirt, debris, and that would then accumulate and be pumped out, filtered in the wash basin there. But again, just another way of site control. You probably go there.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, we also had, working with the engagement committee, and communicating with the school, we had a traffic control plan to make sure that the trucks that came out, they took a left as opposed to going down by the school.
Yeah, that was the major component in speaking with the school district to make sure that we, especially during, pickup and drop off times in the morning and afternoon. Is this another?
When they spray the buildings down,
Yeah, so we'll see here. Yeah. Go ahead. So this is kind of a tip. This is taken a little bit more than halfway, I guess, through the process. Kind of captures what a typical daily occurrence is. Yeah, on the bottom left, you can see there's a mister right there because they were working in that building. Must be on lunch break right now, but you'll kind of see the excavators and all their heavy machinery off to the right there. You'll see a couple of different piles. We'll kind of get into this, but depending on the materials, they were able to sort and segregate steel, to go out to scrap, block, brick, things of that nature. They can be cleaned and then either recycled or disposed of, however they need to go. You'll see a few dumpsters there. That was the asbestos can. That trailer there is a large roll-off. Again, asbestos can, so that's covered. Most likely leaving the site. We just passed the decon. Actually, Rob, you want to pause it just for 1 second?
I might start over.
So there was a decon trailer that they had. So that's where, right there. That's where the contractor, the personnel would don, their appropriate PPE, shower off at the end of the day. There were some wash basins up to the left. You can see the construction fence, and I'm not sure, right at the base of that, you'll be able to see that erosion control silt sock as well.
There's also air monitoring systems set up.
Right, so we'll get into some of the kind of what the personnel and the equipment that we have on, but on the fence, right there, see that little blue dot? That's one of the pieces of equipment that we use. It's a personal air monitor, so that would be the asbestos monitor, or collecting the air samples, and then we also have a, let's see, it should come in the screen here in a second.
We're in a nosedive here.
I'll pop back up again. Yeah, right back here. Sits on a tripod. It's a pretty large like Pelican case. That's it's called a dust track. And that's used for general. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's used for general particulate, so dust essentially. I guess I do want to say when you're looking at all these piles, so procedurally, we got a variance from New York State DOL, just with the volume of material that's coming off site and the way that this has to be treated again as an asbestos project. It's a lot of tonnage, of block and concrete coming out of there. So in order to reduce some of that, we have a variance, like you said, where the abatement contractor can segregate and clean certain materials so that it can go out for recycling and not go to an asbestos landfill. So you'll see the different piles. So that was just them kind of moving it around to whatever made sense. And as part of that process, we have a full-time project, an air monitor on site for the duration of the project. So anytime the contractor was there, we had a staff member on site, watching over and kind of making sure that the appropriate measures are followed, and kind of visually clearing things as they go.
Jim, how does this compare? I mean, they took the old milk plant down in Perry, they just took it down.
A different time, I guess, right?
Wow, I mean, it was just, a couple months ago.
Was that grants? Was it Grant?
No, it was
Covered it?
private.
Right.
They
So-
took,
A lot less eyes probably.
So dust and erosion control, to touch on the right-hand side of that image, you'll see the mister. So that was, they would move that to whatever area they were working on. It was on wheels, so they were tapping into the fire hydrants located around site for their water. In addition to that, they would usually have, typically you would see one or two operators in the equipment, and then you'd have one or two guys, walking around, cleaning up debris, moving the mister, and then you'll see in the middle the gentleman with the fire hose, essentially. So they would stand over the pile or the area that they're working and wet it down. So you can see the accumulation of water. That's really what we're kind of looking for. We want it saturated. Same thing on the left is another pile with the fire hose there. Erosion control, that was obviously meant to capture any type of runoff and sediment that would be, potentially leaving the site to protect the stream. Here are the two pieces of equipment that we use on a day-to-day. So on the left, you have that dust track monitor, and we had two of those on site every day. We would move those according to the weather conditions. So we usually would have one upwind, one downwind, which usually one of them usually was on the school side of the property as well, which also provided a little assurances to the district. Essentially that captures, it's a direct read instrument, so it's running throughout the day and it spits out, we had on 5-minute intervals, we would have a reading come through. Throughout the project, we did not have any exceedances or any concerns. I think there was one spike, but that was because they backed into it with their Bobcat, so ended up falling in the dirt, sucking up a little bit of extra dust
how many rolls
and
of duct
debris.
tape did they use moving that monitor around?
The monitor, quite a few. The little blue pumps on the center and on the right side, those are capturing specific to asbestos. So those are the asbestos air samples that were required, and we had 7 or 8 of those running around the perimeter of the site. Again, we didn't have any exceedances throughout the project, which is a good thing. And those are all regulated again by New York State. On top of the equipment, again, our monitor on site would visually, again, kind of assess things continually. So I'd say that on top of that, everything else is probably the most significant, I would say.
I would just add that all of the dust monitoring data was data logged. So we'll have all that data in our final report. And the little blue pumps, basically they were sent to the media that captures the sample was sent to a laboratory. So we have those laboratory results. Those will also be in the final report.
Yep. So waste disposal and recycling, contractor was able to, again, separate and haul off a number of different materials. If there wasn't anything that could be appropriately cleaned, it was taken out, disposed of as ACM, which was taken up to modern. There we go. All of the asbestos waste was taken to the modern landfill, Model City. Anything C&D debris, non-asbestos things that can be cleaned, those were able to be transported over to the Chafee landfill. And then as far as brick to clean concrete, they were able to recycle. All of the drums and various containers of suspect liquids, I guess, were categorized. Some were hauled off prior to the demolition beginning, and then there were some that were identified during the course of demolition, pulled out of the buildings. Those were also categorized and disposed of as well.
There were no toxic,
There were.
there were toxic chemicals.
There were acids. There was some waste oil that had PCBs. There was some kind of like general petroleum mixed in with water. But we did have some drums of hazardous waste.
And there's still drums or tanks in the ground. Correct.
There are
building safety.
petroleum underground storage tanks, yes,
Okay, but those have not been touched.
correct.
Correct.
Yeah, we left those for this next phase for the brownfield cleanup.
I guess the only other thing we can add to that too is the treatment tanks in the back of the property. That water was tested and was clean, so that was just discharged appropriately.
Was it an open tank?
Yeah,
In the
so there was one that was open and one that was closed. The one that was closed had a pretty
So
solid
does it
concrete lid on it.
Periodically drained or?
Toward the end of the project, it was drained all out over the course of 2-3 days.
It's all been filled in now.
Yeah.
It's
Sure.
Yep. Final visual clearance. So following all of the structures being removed, waste removed from site, procedurally we're required at the end of any abatement project to perform a final visual. And we are literally walking the site. We kind of took, I would say, two to three people, 3 days worth of time, literally walked the entire site kind of in a grid pattern and picked up any type of suspect debris that we found. So and that could be even things that fiberglass, wood, any type of debris that wasn't like an earthen material.
So essentially what we have left are concrete pads.
Correct. Yep.
And dirt.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, the way that we bid the project out earlier, based on the available grant monies, we were trying to get as much essentially bang for the buck for the grant as possible. So we broke it out with different bid items and actually different phases of demolition, depending on how all those numbers came back from the contractors.
Yeah, I mean, coming out of COVID, we weren't really sure what the economy was gonna be like in terms of, contractor bids. So we tried to put as much flexibility into the bid documents as possible. And thankfully, we were able to get all the buildings removed, but we were prepared, to kind of segment things if bids came in high.
So I guess as far as the next slide, Russ. Yeah, so post demolition, again, the fence is in place, left in place, is secured with, it's locked, padlocked. And this is essentially what we're left with. Those containers are gone, the drums off to the left are gone. And I think we did have some updated photos coming, but this is essentially what we're.
But you can
What we're
see
left
that the
with.
challenge with the site is that there are so many multiple levels.
It was just, got together over time, pieced together. It's probably,
Talk about chicken coop development.
Yeah.
100 years worth, right?
yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm sure the neighbors are very appreciative.
The porta potty's gone too.
Now look at that.
Took a couple calls for them.
Eyesore.
So there's nothing left on the site at all.
Be a great skateboard park.
So yeah, we were talking about that.
Look at that, man.
So you can see the tank in the back that's been filled in, and then the other one is the same way. Again, the erosion control is still in place along the fence there.
I think the sense I got, after all the buildings were down, standing out there, is this is a really nice piece of property. Walkable to the.
And it's big.
Right. It has all the utilities.
Yeah.
Right?
Everything's
That's a
there.
big plus.
The village was very cooperative. They let us have, access to the water, hooked up temporary electric.
So it should be very attractive. Once we get all the chemicals out of the ground,
Yeah.
Very nice. That's it.
Okay, recognize the sign?
Yes, it's still over there.
So,
There's no need to do any seeding or anything to preserve the ground over the winter months, or leave it just the way it is?
we're gonna leave it just the way it is.
I mean, a lot of the pads and stuff that were left out as well, I think, we didn't know what the plans are for the developer coming in, other than he wants to do some housing, because that's really what the village wants. So some of those pads will probably get removed or ground or used for driveways or fill on the site. So, I mean, that's another reason for kind of leaving that stuff and not taking it to a different level. We didn't want to do something that they're gonna undo.
Right.
Once they took over, so.
We also really don't want to disturb the existing ground surface.
Mhm.
You know, our plans and specs had the contractor, you know, not moving soil and minimizing disturbance, because we do have some contamination in that surface soil and in the fill there. So that will all be addressed through the brownfield cleanup program.
So now will they come in and drill bore test wells to see if there's any benzene or anything like that in the soils, or?
Well, there was a phase 2 environmental investigation completed for WCBC North that already included a number of test borings and monitoring wells. So there is data that exists. There could be some supplemental data that's collected because of the better access. You know, really you're kind of confined to the perimeter of the plant at that time, and obviously now you could look more interior.
The locations of those tanks is known?
Locations is known, and the impacts from the tanks was defined as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many are there? Do we know? 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to kind of wrap up, the project, as I mentioned, we're going to be submitting a final report to EPA. We expect to have that completed by the end of this month. We're actually still waiting for all of the disposal documentation from the contractor. I believe we should be getting that any day. We would have liked to have come in today and told you how many tons of this and that we're taking off the site, but we don't have that data yet. But that'll all be included in the report. Report will also include a narrative summary of the work, all of our monitoring data, as I mentioned before, field reports, and all of the records, manifests, et cetera, related to the waste disposal. So once that report is reviewed by EPA, we'll provide a copy to the Village of Arcade. That'll be made available for public review. And we'll also be holding that final public meeting on November 5th to wrap things up with the community. And after that, we'll just be working with WCBC North to close out the grant. There'll be a final quarterly report, probably a lot of other paperwork that needs to get filed with EPA. But that's how closeout will look.
We came in on budget.
Came in on budget. And
Well, this is essentially phase 1, right? So next is for the developer to come in, do the brownfield cleanup. Now, do they have funding for that, or they have to apply for funding?
They have to apply.
Okay, and it's through the same EPA or New York State?
New York State program.
Okay.
And what the advantage of the brownfield cleanup program for New York State is that they get some really attractive tax credits to help offset some of their remediation costs and part of their redevelopment costs as well. So some of this site work and things are also covered by some very attractive tax credits. That's why I wanted to leave something in. And the other thing that we did that wasn't mentioned is we actually, Rob and I have had a meeting with the DEC early on in the process after we had our phase 1, phase 2 environmentals done to make sure this property was going to qualify as a brownfield eligible project. So they indicated it was. So we wanted to always had that in the end of our sites.
But they still have to apply for a grant.
They do.
It's actually not, a grant, and they don't apply for funding. They apply for entry into a program that allows them a number of benefits, including liability protection and tax credits for money that they spend on cleanup and money that they spend on improving the property with the, housing development.
But they're only gonna, they're not gonna do the entire site, right? They're just gonna do the location of those storage tanks, or are they gonna do the entire site? So that we're looking at basically brownfield, and that's it. Is that the plan?
I would expect that they would, yes. The entire site, not, with the exception of the additional acreage that's been undeveloped.
Including the water treatment facility in the back.
And it's clean. And Hoover tested that a couple times.
Does it qualify under that? Brownfield cleanup? Or is that the responsibility of the developer who comes in, puts new construction? Because it seems to me it'd be a hazard.
Right. Well, it was a hazard, but I don't think it is any longer. I mean, the materials that were found in the one tank were tested and it was
Yeah, but
just
there's water that gets open.
not any longer.
Oh, unless it rains.
It's been drained
Okay.
and filled in.
Oh, I see. All right.
So thank you for giving us the opportunity to come in this morning. It's been a pleasure working with Jim, Robin,
Great.
Scott. We can really work with you.
Just so the board
Pleasure
knows,
to see you.
they did a great job.
Well, their reputation persists.
Oh my gosh, anytime there was any little bump in the road, they pick up the phone, Jim, we got this, we got that, you get it resolved in no time flat.
I'm certain on your list of big projects, this is probably not that big for Labella.
Pretty good size.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
It was one of our primary projects on the environmental side for
okay,
this year, for
for
sure.
sure.
So I've known Rob a long time, 20 years or so. And we talked about this project right from the very beginning, before he got engaged with us. And I think he was almost as passionate as I was about wanting to do something.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure the county didn't want anything to do with it.
I'm sure they're not taking back taxes.
No.
No way.
But we have that option to take it back if he doesn't get it in the brownfield cleanup program, so that's, and then if that happened, we would go back out and
This
re-RFP.
developer got a history of doing things
Yeah,
that way.
Well, I think, to your credit, Jim, and the rest of the board, you kept your eye on the ball, you knew what we wanted to do and what the end game was here, so that's a big plus. And we're moving in that direction, so
Yes.
can't ask for anything more than that.
Well, I appreciate the board's commitment to this project as well. I know it's not easy. It costs money to do this stuff, and you guys were there, so appreciate that.
Okay. So unfortunately, Jim and I have to run. I don't know how you wanna defer these program updates?
Yeah, item 4 and beyond will defer to the next meeting. We do have anticipate getting a micro loan application in for review, so we'll probably pull back together within another month to
Sure,
act on that.
sounds good. Okay.
Just need the German.
Technically, you don't have a meeting anymore because you don't have a quorum, so
Right,
it's just
so
close
we
the
don't
meeting.
need
It's just close the meeting
So
and
just
adjourn.
leave that.
Okay, that's- no
All
voting.
right, thank you.
But we'll take care of our budget over there, you guys. You see where the money goes to help.